Good afternoon, ex-Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue for his dear friend Annastacey. Once again, in my car, driving home after a hard day's psychologizing, helping people cope with mental distress, psychological concerns, and so forth. This brief dialogue is on what is it that I am talking about? What am I actually talking about here? I think this is a nod back to the original brief dialogue about what is enlightenment. So I thought I would revisit the topic, perhaps from a slightly different angle. Where to begin? I think I've talked around it quite a lot, and the concepts, I hope, are becoming clear, at least conceptually, at that level. But what is it that we're talking about? The I, the me, so to speak, this identity, is commonly mistaken to be something that it isn't. And when I say mistaken, I'd like to be very clear on the use of that word. The mistake is often perceived as an error, that if I correct the error, then something will be better or something will be fine. So I use the word cautiously. It's not an error, it's not a mistake, so to speak, but it's a taking of one's identity, you could say, as something that it isn't. The identity, the subjective core of the self, you could say, is fairly easy to explore through what is called a pathway of negation. Not that negation ever gets you anywhere. There's nothing you land on by negating. And for those of you who are not familiar with negation, or the idea of negation, it's a fairly simple mental concept, at least. You can determine what you're not through a process of negating. So for instance, very commonly asked question might be, am I the body? And to answer this question, we use a simple form of logic. And the logic might be something like, if I was to lose my finger in an accident, heaven forbid, would I still exist? And the answer, at least most people's answer, is yes, I would still exist. So the sense of existing is uninterrupted by the loss of the finger. So that subjective core sense of I, or me, you could say, is not the body, or is probably not the body. Am I the idea I have about myself? I'm a male, I work as a psychologist, I'm a nice guy, fabulously handsome, dashing, courageous, etc. All those concepts that I hold, are they me? Is that what or who I am? And once again, fairly easy to dissect. We just look at a concept, we just take one, in fact. We say, the nice guy, let's choose that. Am I a nice guy? Well, sometimes I am. I can be a bit of a dick. Sometimes as well. And that concept, mental as it is, can change. And obviously, we know that concepts change and shift, etc. And if that concept was to change, would that impact on my existence? No, I don't think it would. I think if I changed my idea about what type of person I am, I'd still exist. And so on, and we could choose anything, personality, my role, my job. And the more we look at things that we think we are, the more we can negate. I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, and so on and so forth. And so that's, in some ways, a relief to the mind. It's well, thank God I'm not this awful person stuck in this stupid, hideous body. That can be a relief. But it still doesn't get to the core issue, you could say. And again, it can be done infinitely, this negation process. And to negate infinitely can also feel a bit barren. I don't know what I am. You can end up there. So that's we'll call that the negative side. What is the positive side? What am I? Remains the question. What am I? Well, to cut a long story short, we could go into all the ideas and labels about what I am. We could say I am the presence of awareness. I am consciousness itself, etc. But that's not quite it, because those are concepts. Those are words that point to something. My existence is not the word consciousness. So we enter a great difficulty at this point, because the mind which operates in the space-time realm, dimension, and the conceptual realm, the mind cannot operate outside of the conceptual. How would you have a thought about something that cannot be thought about, in essence? Well, if you can't figure that out, the answer is you can't. No matter what you think about yourself, no matter how clever or beautiful or magnificent your definitions, you will never be able to think about your existence. You'll never be able to... you'll never have your existence revealed to you by thinking alone. So what is it that it is? What is it that it is? What is it that it is? Let's start with the basic one. Here I am is the basic one. As in, I'm here. Or, if you prefer something less definitive, the indefinite, something's here. Something is here. No doubt. What else can we say? Remember, these are concepts. What else can we say? Are we awake? Aware, you could say, even. Are we awake? Yes. I'm awake or aware of stuff going on around me, you might say. Again, using concepts loosely, not getting too caught up in strict terminology and precision, just very general. Because as long as we're dealing in concepts, they are all inaccurate, and being extremely precise will not help this understanding. So you might as well use concepts that are understandable, is my way of thinking. So I'm here, for sure, I exist. There's an existence, because if I didn't exist, then there'd be nothing to be aware of. God, there'd be no awareness of anything if there was no existence. So that suddenly makes one realize that this existence or presence, you could say, and this awareness are one and the same. They must be the same thing. Now I like to labour that point. I don't know why I like to labour that point. I like to. To exist is to have a knowingness of existence. Here I am. So existence and the knowingness are, I don't want to say intertwined. They're one and the same thing. It's a knowing existence. It has been said by other speakers, I think I've heard it said, this is an aware presence. I like existence better. I don't know why. It's just a flavour, but I know what is meant by presence. Because existence can be a confusing word too. Exist can indicate something separate from something else, whereas presence is a bit more sort of doesn't point anywhere. And if you want to combine the two very nicely, I've heard the word being used as well. So this is being, amness in some sense. What I don't like about being is it doesn't give that flavour of the awakeness in some ways. So it's very simple. It's very simple. I am this presence that is awake. This awake presence. Very simple. Now I'm going to chop I am off the front. The reason for that is, well, as I said earlier, you can be generic with your words if you want, because words are words at the end of the day. Doesn't matter if you're accurate or inaccurate, particularly. But the I am, I think, adds a layer of confusion, because it's suggesting now a separate entity who has these qualities, this person who is awake and who is aware. So we chop off the prefix I am, and we're just left with aware, awakeness. Now the reason I like that more is because it takes us more into the non-locality. I've heard it suggest that we're everywhere, but I feel that's quite an inaccurate statement. Certainly doesn't reflect my experience. It's not an everywhereness. It's a non-locality, non-location. Infinities are quite a good word. I like using that word too sometimes. There is a sense of an experience, you could even say, of infinity, and that's inwards and outwards simultaneously, such that there is no inwards and outwards. There's an infinity. So there's an aware awakeness. There's an aware presence. Infinite aware presence. This aware presence, and remember, dropping the I am off it, just aware presence, it's never interrupted. This aware presence is, I call it seamless. It's a seamless, uninterrupted, aware presence. I like awake presence, perhaps. Not a big fan of aware, I've decided. It points to a duality there. This awake presence. Never interrupted. Think about it this way. What could possibly interrupt existence itself? Existence itself. You could have an awful thought about yourself, about the world, about someone, or I should say, an awful thought could appear, but would it interrupt your existence? No, of course not. That existence would have to be there before, you could say, the thought arose. It would have to be there before the thought arose to witness the thought arising, coming into existence, and popping out of existence again. So this is an ever-present awakeness. An ever-present awakeness. Ever-awakeness, you could say. I could have an awful life event. I could have an amazing life event. And again, it would not impact on the existence. I could be part of a historical event of great tragedy and suffering, with people perhaps even dying, blood, pain, suffering, and it would not impact on existence itself, that existence itself. Even when I go to sleep at night, this is where it gets very interesting. I lie in my bed. or to get rid of the personal, the experience of lying in a bed appears. And the eyelids are getting heavy, but existence is uninterrupted. And then suddenly, without any interruption at all, a totally seamless, ever-present existence, ever awake, ever-present existence. I'm dreaming. Now, the sense of dreaming, as we all know, can be a bit crazy, can be a bit time and space distorted. The perspective can be a bit funny. You can be in your body in a dream, or third person, or floating above the action like a camera hovering in the air. Dreams can be totally crazy, but someone or something must be awake and aware and present to experience the dream. There must be an awakeness of you in your essence, you could say, to experience that dream. And then suddenly I say suddenly because it usually is sudden, you're awake in your bed again in the morning, without any sense of interruption to your existence. Now, you might hear from friend or partner sleeping next to you, person observing you, if you have such a thing in your bedroom, that you were unconscious for, or out cold, you could say, or asleep for 8 hours, 9 hours, etc. You weren't there. But that's them reporting their experience of that body that they saw in their experience. But that's not the direct experience of your, or this ever-present aware awakeness. This ever-present aware awakeness was in bed, had a dream, and is awake again, talking to someone about sleeping. At no point in any of that did you go away. You didn't vanish for a second. You weren't lost for a second. That's what this is pointing to. This is all pointing to that. There's no way to describe that. That's the best that language can do. It's to say that's the context in which everything appears, an awake, aware context that is ever present, ever awake, in which content, stuff, appears. Now it's very funny when the mind hears about this. Sorry, briefly interrupted by my phone there. When the mind hears about this, it tries its best to get a grip on it, to understand it somehow. I need to understand this awake, aware thing that I think I am. And it often comes up with these weird and wonderful ideas, like it might literally just say to itself, I am the awake, aware presence. And that can become an idea that the mind fixes onto, and it understands very cleverly that, okay, I'm not the body, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not my role in society, I'm not anything I can point my finger to. Got that, fine. I must be this awake, aware presence. And that can lead to a funny state of detachment, a sort of aloofness, you could say. This, I am the aware awakeness. It's like the idea of being the aware awakeness becomes the identity, becomes who I am. So there's a caveat here when this has been spoken about. It's very, very, very easy for the mind to take this as an identity. It's very easy. This is who I am. I'm this empty, awake, aware presence because Winterview did this great talk, and I realized that's what I must be. So realizing this beyond doubt, beyond concept, is commonly what is referred to as enlightenment. That is the enlightenment. And when it's beyond doubt, when it's beyond when that is, this is where it gets hard to use words, when that is seen or understood, you could say, or realized, recognized is a good way of saying it, beyond doubt what I am, that is what is referred to as enlightenment. Which is interesting because that realization has nothing to do with the content of thought or the appearance. So it wipes away very easily all these very grand spiritual notions about levels of consciousness, God, gods, the way the universe works, the secrets of the universe, energies, chakras, understanding great mysteries of time and space. All that stuff is wiped away as meaningless in the context of enlightenment. Not perhaps meaningless in the context of something interesting in life to talk about. I wouldn't say that. It's very interesting to talk about all that stuff. But when it comes to enlightenment itself, all that stuff is a red herring. What might you call it? What's a better way of saying it? It's a distraction. It's sort of you're looking at the wrong thing, is a better way of saying it. It's not what's being talked about. And it's very easy, similarly, to dismiss the simplicity. It's so staggeringly simple that it's easy to overlook, and very difficult for the mind to believe. It cannot be just this awake, aware being thing that can't be really described very well. It can't be that, surely. It must be something else. It must be something grander. The mind finds it very hard to let go of ideas, especially orthodox, traditional ideas of enlightenment. It finds the mind is very nervous. It's a very cautious creature. And if it's read in a book that enlightenment is, you realize, something called God consciousness and unity with all creation, blah blah blah, etc., with bliss and divine light, etc., it has to have that for enlightenment. It has to have it. Otherwise, at least as far as the mind is concerned, it's not enlightenment. And it gets very pernickety about it. It's very funny. You hear a lot of debate on the internet about what enlightenment is and is not. And you find the orthodox traditions having a lot of difficulty accepting that. But to be fair, even this description is conceptual. I'm talking about something that's experiential in this, but I'm using concepts to describe that. So this could be pulled apart, and what he's saying, what X is saying is a bunch of crap, blah blah blah. That can easily be done. Anything conceptual can be dismantled very easily. Very easily. So I thought this would be a nice little recalibration. I do talk a lot, and I do talk about a lot of stuff, but I want to bring it back to the raw simplicity of what's being pointed to. This awake awareness, which is unable to be defined, impossible to be defined, is what is being spoken of. What is being spoken of. Anyway, thanks for listening, as always. Comments are welcome.